just got up and fucked off once again. We're doing things a little bit different tonight. He got all dressed up for this. So did I. Wore a collar shirt, trying to look nice here. It's a big time show tonight. We got a big guest on tonight.
Biggest show in the history of Talkin Tek. Biggest show ever.
Bender, how you doing, buddy?
I feel like shit. I was hit by a truck and then run over by a fucking freight train, but I wasn't missing this show for anything. So
it looks like Bender's got the Wuhan, so
I got fucking something anyways. We used to just have to worry about getting herpes down at the racetrack, but now we get this fucking coronavirus going around, and Jesus Christ.
All right, so
speaking of Jesus Christ, isn't it Good Friday? Yeah, so I guess we better get into it before the swearing really starts. So
let's get on the disclaimer.
So the opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of B. Larson Metalworks, Fully Tech Marine, Fully Tech Mechanicals, Fully Tech Charters, the National Association of Cave Diving, Sweetwater Organic Coffee, or anyone who may employ or terminate the employment of myself or Bob. All names and places and situations are purely fictitious. If any of these names sound familiar, it's purely coincidental. There may be some colorful language, so it's time to send the kids off to bed, unless, of course, you're in California, in which case you're a shitty parent and they won't turn out anyways. Viewer discretion is advised. We're going to skip what you're drinking until we get our guest on. This is a really, really special show. When we started this show, after we had our second favorite guest of all time on, we made a short list of people we wanted to get on the show, and we've slowly checked them off. But this one is he was on the top of the list. So tonight's guest, his contribution to the sport is likely unmatched. Yes, many have come before, but only one did it with such grace and finesse. He is one of the few that survived to pass on the lessons we all take for granted. When you see a diver in good form, it's the indirect influence of this man's work. Magellan, Columbus, Drake, and Green. We walk in the footsteps of giants. It's our privilege to share an hour of our time with a legend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Larry Green.
Oh, and here he comes. And Larry, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. Glad I can be here.
Well, you're glad to be here, but that's only because you haven't seen our show yet.
Well, you said we could drink, so I'm okay.
It's going to be one of those nights. So,
speaking of drinking, what are you drinking there, Larry?
Proper 12.
Outstanding.
So, Larry, I'm just about done with that, so I'm pouring myself a little bit more.
Well,
Proper 12.
thank you. I've just now tapped the one you gave me when you were here.
Oh, very nice. Bender, what are you drinking?
I am drinking, in honor of my co-host, a Hazy Mariner.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
For some reason it's backwards on the screen, but yeah, it's outstanding.
Cheers, boys. It's going to be a good show. We already got a question, but this one's for you, Bender. You're wearing a tie. Do you have a funeral to go to after this?
When you get the opportunity to spend an hour with a legend, you dress the part. So you guys show some respect.
If you guys notice, I even got a shirt on with a collar today.
He might even be wearing pants. So
come on, don't
I
push.
don't want to go any further.
All right, Bender. So what do you want to start with here?
Well, so for we were chatting about this in the pregame show, and the newer technical divers today certainly have lived a bit of a spoiled life, and I guess I'm one of them. The technology was so good and so reliable, and then the techniques are what really changed the game, and we never really learned how to do it wrong, because so many ahead of us, sort of wrote the books, and to have a real pioneer on with us today, we're just going to drink some beers or some scotches, and we're going to tell some story or listen to stories of how we got where we are today. And where to start, Larry? When did you do your first cave dive?
Well, I think it'd be more appropriate to back up and say when I did my first dive.
Okay.
And I was I was building houses, and one of the friends I was working with, he lived on the Wiki Watcher River, and he was already a diver, and asked me one day if I wanted to go dive the river, and I said, well, I've always been curious about scuba, so yeah. I said, well, I've got all the equipment. Go to my house, and he lived on the river, so all we got to do is throw everything on the boat and go down the river. So my first dive before getting certified was in a place called Hospital Hole in Wiki Watcher River, which is a sinkhole in the river that's 150 foot deep. So
Okay.
that kind of pushed my encouragement to go get certified. So I finally found a PADI open water instructor in Hudson, Florida, and I took my first open water class from him. And I enjoyed it so much that I think I took every specialty course that PADI had to offer at that time. And I kept coming back.
Did you get all the patches and like sew them to a jacket?
Well, I never sewed them on. I collect them and put them in a bag, and they're still in the drawer, you know. But I don't put stickers on the car, and I don't wear, a whole lot of shit on my clothes either. But anyway, he said, I've taught you every course that I'm qualified to teach you. And so he said, well, I got one other thing I can show you. So this was back in the very early 80s. He took me up to Lorville, and he took me to a place called Peacock Springs. And back then it was still private property, and you could drive your car right up to the dive site. And so Peacock Springs, number one, was the first overhead environment that I'd ever went into, long before I ever took a cave course. And the fortunate thing, I think, also for me, and which was a rarity back in the early 80s, that my open water instructor was also a cave diver.
Okay.
So,
So he got you interested.
That helped a lot in that training. But my first overhead environment was Peacock Springs. And I think my second was a place called the Polder Number 3.
Well, I mean, that's quite the progression there.
And then came Eagle's Nest.
Yeah.
So I lived in Hernando County. So I was like 10 or 15 minutes from Eagle's Nest and less than that to DePolder. And back then, my instructor, he was friends with the ranger at the Polder systems are on Boy Scout reservation. So this was before they had a guide program there that got delinquished. But so we went in and we met the ranger at his house there, and Chuck, who was my instructor, he brought a bottle of wine with him, and for the ranger, and we sat there and talked with him, gave him a bottle of wine, and he said, "Y'all be safe." And so we went diving the Polder Number 3 sink. So, and that was long before that. That was before I even knew anything about that guide programs and cave certifications and all this other kind of cool shit.
That's all new.
When would that have been, Larry? Like approximately what year you figure that was when you got into the
very early 80s, like 82, 3, 4, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Do you think if we grab a bottle of wine and head over to Dive Polder, they'll let us in and dive it?
No. No, they kicked. I was a guide for the FSR program there for quite a number of years. I was actually assistant director of the guide program there. And we were given the Boy Scouts, $1,500 donation every year. And after the last fatality, we were paying a $2 million insurance policy just to be able to dive there.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, but there's only two fatalities there during the time I was part of the guide program.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was on one of the dives. But
Oh.
there were 7 other people on the dive too.
Wow.
That was back during the air days, and it was number 2 sink. So we were planning a video dive in number 2, which was downstream, which is the deep section. And we planned the dive to be in probably 270, 280 in the back.
And this is on air.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
we didn't have anything else during the 80s to dive if we were going to dive and stuff. And there was, like I said to you guys earlier, there was a few people that, could tolerate the nitrogen, and actually we didn't know any better than even the O2 and I think the saving grace was probably the amount of gas we were carrying and the amount of time we'd stay in there, that the O2 never seemed to be a problem that we knew of anyway. But yeah, the neat thing about number 2 sink, it's a horizontal vertical fracture that is 200 feet deep before you get into the cave. So you actually have to drop inverted down a crack until you get to 200 feet. Yeah, I've taken video of going down that crack, and except for having people in front of you and the bubbles are coming back at you, it looks like you're on a horizontal plane.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That day, the guy that didn't make it out on that dive, it was zero visibility from the surface until we hit 230 feet inside the cave.
Wow.
Online going in. And then all of a sudden we hit 230 going in the downstream, and all of a sudden it broke and it's just cracking air blue clear.
Wow.
Not a particle in the water.
That sounds
so.
incredible.
And this room is probably 250 to 300 foot across and 150 to 200 foot according to where you're at high, and nothing but boulders as big as semi trucks.
Wow.
It's just such an awesome dive. So we wanted to video it, and we did, but the video never made it public because I think it got confiscated after the fatality, because that's how we found the diver. Well, we came back out, and during decompression we counted heads and there was one missing. So, but part of cave diving back then.
Unfortunately, so. So we talked about the early days and the equipment that you guys basically had to invent and engineer on the fly. Again, now we just run down to the dive shop and we get a scooter that's rated to 1,000 feet and 600,000 lumen light that burns for 3 days. You charge it, and then you go down to Florida for a week, and when you get home, you think about charging it again. Tell us a little bit about the things you and your crew had to invent to.
Well, I think, Larry, first you need to start off and tell us what you told us earlier before we went live about how you wouldn't dive gear unless it was modified. That was a rule.
Well, there was a term back then that we called it the 11th rule of cave diving, was that you never took any equipment in the water that hadn't been modified from some other application, because back then there was no manufacturers for dive equipment, and especially cave diving equipment.
Yeah.
So we were making stuff up as we go. Hand making reels, until eventually a few people started putting machine shops together in their garage, and it kind of grew from there. But I think one of the biggest thing that was a benefit for us was the light technology and battery technology, because we were wearing lead acid battery packs on our side that was just the size of a pony bottle, with 50-watt halogen bulbs that would, if we went to 100 watt, it might last for maybe an hour, but I doubt it. So everything was restricted on your equipment you had to work with. And we actually started doing some video, and we put some canister together that was actually it's about the same size as an aluminum 80 to run a 250 watt halogen bulb. And you had to rig it and wear it like a stage bottle. And it would hardly barely last for 30 minutes. So, but the lights were the first big advancement that really benefited us a lot, you know. And people said, well, how could you swim straight with all that weight on one side? Well, we started out with putting it on our butt.
So you were flat. Yeah.
You know, because in the beginning we had D-rings on our tanks, and we were butt mounting everything sitting on your butt, you know, because it was so big and heavy, you know. And then gradually started bringing it around to the side, and then they started shrinking up, and it became no problem anymore. But and then because we had nothing but just handwritten tables, the U.S. Navy deep air tables, up until the late 80s, is all we had to use to dive deep with, and that was air decompression. There was no technology to give us the benefits for, and we didn't know anything about nitrox, and especially we couldn't even get oxygen. And what oxygen we did get later on was welding grade.
Okay.
You know, but you know, primarily the biggest difference between welding grade and breathing grade was that they vacuumed the tanks before they refilled them. Basically, other than the aviation grade.
But now, how deep were you when you were starting on O2?
Well, we started using O2 at 30 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because we were looking at the Navy back then, and they were testing their guys at 60 feet. So I said, well, we can do 30.
There you go. There you go.
You know, so that might have helped with the tolerance, since we were probably over 2 ATAs at 240, 50 feet. What's that? 2 ATAs is what, 218?
Yeah, I think 218.
Somewhere in there?
Yeah.
So 218 was considered a shallow dive back then.
Jesus
Even
Christ.
there. Yeah. But, you know, I grew up in Hernando County, and everything in Hernando County was deep.
Yeah.
DePolder, Eagle's Nest, you know, everything around there was deep. And, you know, I'd run up here on the weekends to dive something shallow. But during the week, I'd get off work and go to the Nest or go to DePolder or something like that on a daily basis.
You're in a place for it.
Yeah.
Living down there, you get a little bit spoiled with the good cave diving.
I really did. And early on, I got easy access to the Nest because it was still private property back then. And I worked at a little dive shop in Hernando Beach, and the owner of the dive shop knew the property owners of that 700 acres that the Nest sits on. And he introduced me to him, and he actually gave me sole rights to be able to dive it. So for a long time, I was the only diver that had access. So it created a kind of a closer relationship, because that's when I really got to know Chuck Exley a lot, because he was just starting to teach Trimix programs at that time. And I'd get a call from Chuck and said, what are you doing this weekend? I said, I don't know. What do you want? He said, well, I got a class. You want to go to the Nest? I said, yeah, I'll meet you out there.
And so Chuck had to call you for permission.
Yeah, in those days, yeah. I mean, and everybody did for a period of time. And I was always open to give access, but their stipulation in that was that people had to be with me to come out there, because there was a cable blocking the road, you know, a big 3/4-inch cable with big locks on it blocking the road. And I was the only one that had access to it, other than there's a hunting club that had access to hunt through the area. Okay. So the hunting club was actually the monitors So I don't know how many times they run people off from trying to get in there.
Yeah. Well, now they hunt there because now it's what the state owns it all.
Yeah, in the state, now anybody and everybody can hunt there.
Oh yeah, last time I was there was all kinds of hunters out there. I don't know what was in season, but they were everywhere.
But it's, you know, the nice thing is you know, you got a nice platform deck and parking area.
Oh yeah.
Before, you know, we were parking in a muddy parking lot, splashing in dirty mud, walking down a run to get into the water. And, you know, back then we were taking someone new, we'd send them to the water first, because back then there was always a shitload of moccasins and gators out there all the time.
Jesus Christ.
As population grew and traffic grew, you know, they kind of started scaring away, and we don't see them anymore. But there in the early days, there was always gators, or moccasins were the worst because they were aggressive shit. You know.
So you've been chased by a few of them, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've driven a scooter with those moccasins. The Aquazept, when we finally started getting the Aquazept, was the first time we started having a competent scooter to go deep with, because the Fairlawn's was still negative, but when we found the Aquazepts in the late 80s, early 90s, they were German made, and we'd have them sent over from Germany. And the nice thing about those, they were big, but they were neutral. You can make them neutral in the water. And the prop on the Aquazept is the same size as the prop you'd have on a motorboat.
Jesus.
Man. And they were fast, but you had lead acid technology and, you know, motors at that time. So you didn't have tremendous run times on them. But what was kind of neat about the German technology on the Aquazept was that, and it was very analog. They had a knob on the side that connected to the armature on the motor, that you could turn it one way or the other, and it could adjust the armature on the motor to where you could go to 12 volt or 24 volt.
Oh.
High range or low range.
Okay.
It was all mechanical.
That's pretty cool.
You know, so they were pretty good for the time. I mean, my first dive that I did with Jim King on an aqua, because he brought the Aquazepts with him. The first time I'd been on one, and the first time I'd ever been on Trimix, and we had planned a dive to go upstream at the nest, and we quickly went well beyond places I've ever been before. And he's running out in front of me, and it's a huge passage back there. It's 80 foot wide, 30 foot tall, and just break down all the way back. And all of a sudden I see him stop. He's running along the ceiling. He stops, and I see him unclip his scooter, and it drops like a torpedo to the floor. I said, "Oh shit." I said, I don't know this guy. I just met him today. So I remember very clearly, all I wanted to do is see his eyes as he came back to me. And we connected. We this is back, who had any training for anything? We towed each other out and got out. And from that one dive, we created a little over a 2-year project. And it probably took us 3 months before we ever wanted to even take the time to pull that other scooter out.
Wow.
Because on the next dive, we reached the end of Sheck's line, and I spun out a full reel, bam. And so we couldn't slow down.
All right, you got to keep going. You don't got time to get
Fuck that scooter. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Larry, so when I dive with newer divers, or more so when my wife dives with new divers, they always comment on how good she looks in the water, how awesome her trim is, and propulsion techniques, and you know, there's an entire cult of narcissists that swim backwards on weekends at their stroke pits and stuff. But when people compliment myself or compliment Alicia on their ability, I always answer them. I say, "You think I look good? You need to see Larry Green in the water." Because although Larry, you and I have never had the chance to dive together, I have seen you in the water. I've been going in as you've been coming out, or vice versa. And I always say, if you set the bar for where you want to be as a diver, as a golfer, as a race car driver, or as anything, beyond where you're ever going to get, you're always going to get better. And Larry is the bar by which I measure my abilities as a diver, and I know I will never even come close to measuring up. But if that's where I want to be, I'm always going to strive to be better. And that's sort of a huge contribution to diving that nobody really measures, no one put their finger on. But I really feel like yourself and maybe a few others at some point, probably I'm guessing in the early to mid 90s. I don't know whether you actively worked at this or just figured it out, but cave diving and even open water diving with high level of skill became a bit of an art. And can you talk a little bit about how the skill development got to the point where, you know, where it is today? You know, you look at GUE instructors and just how amazingly smooth they are in the water, and that had to come from something, right? You know, where if you go and take an open water course, no matter how shitty the instructor is, the students all think they're amazing, and that's the bar they're going to measure themselves by. So I guess how did you come up with this shit? How did you get so good?
Well, practice. Because when I first was training for cave diving, there was frog kicking and a lot of stuff was not a requirement. All these things, you know, kind of evolved through experience. And I think a lot of it, fortunately for me, was a collective, because in the early days, in the, you know, early to mid 90s, most of the cave diving that training that took place in Florida was generated through Jenny Springs, because people would call Jenny Springs to find an instructor, because that's the way it was back then. And I happened to be involved with that group. I lived here, and when I became a staff instructor for Jenny Springs, and the other staff instructors at that time were Steve Berman, Jared Jablonski, myself, and there was a number of others there that we were staff instructors, and we worked together. And I think we collectively grew off of each other a lot. And Jared and I actually became NACD instructors on the same institute, because we took the NACD Instructor Institute on the same institute under a guy named, what was his name? What was it? Damn it. Anyway, it'll come to me. But so our numbers for the NACD was one apart, and then actually Jared wound up becoming a training director for the NACD for a year prior to me coming in there, and I actually wound up, for some reason, spent 15 years involved in that shit. But anyway, I think, you know, I got drawn to people to grow from. I never, you know, I dove with people like Bill Main, took me under his wing early on. So Bill was a guide at DePolder for a long time, and I lived in Hernando County, and it got to be where every time he'd bring a guest down to DePolder, he'd call me up and say, "I'm coming down. You want to come dive with us?" So I picked up a lot, and I started picking up a lot of stuff that I didn't get other places. from diving with people like Bill and Jared and all these guys, because, we were constantly growing. And back then, when students came down to take classes, it was nothing to completely take all their equipment, because the way it was, and completely strip it and rebuild it to pretty much the way things are now. So for me, it was being in the right place in the right time and having the motivation and inspiration to be as good as you could be. And for me, I never wanted to be an instructor. I never did, because I quit. I even quit teaching open water because it was more valuable for me to go cave diving than it was to teach an open water class for minimum wage. So so I started diving Trimix in the late 80s, early 90s. And at that time, there was no training agencies that were even training people to teach them that. There was no training for it whatsoever. So it was not until 92 or 3 that even INTD started developing their nitrox and decompression and Trimix programs. So not until the mid 90s that I started getting out of construction. I've been cave diving and actually doing some exploration for about 10 years now. And then I said, well, now I think maybe I might have something to offer, because I had 10 years under my belt and I had some exploration, and I've been doing some stuff that actually no one else had been doing. So I got into it and it grew. And it was just as kind of a sideline it started out as. And I never thought that I would do it for a living for 30 years. But, here I am doing that. It's like, and we reached the limits of technology at Eagle's Nest and in the 90s, because, when you're wearing quads on your back and you're carrying 3 stage balls on your arm and you got teams staging other tanks in the water, you start thinking, well, shit, what else can we do? But there was very little available for us back then. So Jim contacted this company called Carmel Institute in London, and they were working on the old Mark 15 rebreathers, the draggers. And so he wound up purchasing them, and we couldn't get a course sponsored here in the States, but at that time, Jamaica was still a British colony. So we leased the Marine Laboratory at Discovery Bay in Jamaica to go get trained on these Mark V rebreathers, just for the sake of doing exploration in Eagle's Nest. So it was a long but funny story. But Jim, he lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he had this twin turboprop King Air that he flew down. And there was 4 of us that went over there. It was Jim, a guy named John Cray, which is an early technician of working on nitrox tables. He stopped in Hernando County to pick me up, and then we stopped in Key West and picked up a guy named Billy Dean. Billy had Key West Highways for a long time in Key West. And we had this plane so loaded up that we had to crawl around the cabin in it to get around. And so we landed in Jamaica and spent a week over there training on these rebreathers. And coming back, well, I looked a little bit, wasn't great then, but like I did. So can you imagine in like 91, this group of pretty scruffy people land in Key West from Jamaica looking like we did in a King Air turboprop. They were all over us, and I didn't realize that, I was pretty naive. So we all got off the plane to, see Billy off, and I had something for him and I forgot about it. And back then things were pretty lax. So I run back across the tarmac and climb up on the plane. and get out. By the time I get there, there's all these people on there, and they have me pinned to the floor with this metal to the back of my head. I said, okay, but anyway, I understood because after I thought about it for a while, coming back from Jamaica in the early 90s or something like that, and looking like we did, okay, yeah. So we survived that. But I really think that, so we dove rebreathers in Eagle's Nest in 1991. Now then, I would like to know if anybody's dove rebreathers in a cave prior to that, anywhere. I can't hear you.
Bob, can't hear you. Like maybe somebody in Europe diving something, but like that would be an interesting challenge to sort of put out there and say, does anybody know of a cave dive that took place, on any kind of a closed semi or fully closed unit prior to 1991? So were these machines like were they a full CCR like the modern ones today, or
they were the military fully closed CCR?
So were they like our modern ones where you have a diluent cylinder and then you got a variable PO2, or?
Well, they're all basically the same. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the technology and the plumbing and the sensors and all are a lot different. But in this unit, the diluent O2 sensor, there were cubes in the very back. They're round cylinders, and they're in the very bottom of the back of the unit, and it looked like a turtle shell almost. And the scrubber was a round unit that set round on your back. It was probably about this big to sit on your back. And it was made for working vertically. So to be able to swim and dive with this unit, we wound up having to put almost a 20-pound weight at the back of our shoulders to be able to trim us down, to be able to dive with it. Yeah, but what was nice about, having a dive partner that, can do what he did, we got the units, and this was during the same time that a guy named Brett Gillum, I don't know if you know who Brett is, but he owned a cruise vessel called the Ocean Quest, and they were scuttling it in New Orleans, so they were selling stuff off. So Jim goes down and he buys at a really great deal a 16-foot, 54-inch double lockout recompression chamber with a 50 CFM Bauer compressor and two 50-foot storage bottles, and brings it back up to Tennessee, and we set it up, and we create a little facility there that we could start doing test dives on the rebreather in a chamber before we go to the nest. And so all that was kind of interesting and everything, but and over the years, I've used a lot of different rebreathers, Cis Lunar and the Yellow Box of Death, they called them, and all these others. But even with that and side mount and everything, I've always considered these items for me, because I guess I'm just so old school and stubborn, that I've used them all, but they're all tools for a purpose.
Right.
And for everyday diving, I don't need a rebreather. And for everyday cave diving, I don't need to be in side mount. So, but I have used them for specific missions. And they're a good tool for what they're needed for. But I don't need it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like the evolution of the technology certainly has changed the game in CCR, but also the logistics, right? I'm a CCR convert myself, but I say that we actually had this conversation this week as we're entering another helium shortage, and in different parts of the world, in different countries, helium is nearly impossible to get, and we're now to a point, at least in Canada, where we're just not going to support open circuit Trimix divers anymore, because we simply can't get the helium. We can't get a volume of helium. One open circuit Trimix dive would supply a rebreather diver for an entire season. So,
Right.
you know, we've more or less been forced to use that technology. But you're right, in a lot of applications, you know, a set of doubles and a single decompression cylinder, you can do a lot of kick-ass diving with that setup. So
Yeah, things have changed tremendously since those earlier days because we were buying T-bottles of helium for under $50 during those days. I was paying for aviation grade oxygen maybe $15 a T-bottle. You know, so yeah. Back then, you know, but now the way things are now is just, to me, just in the last number of years starting to make the value worthwhile. But earlier on, it was kind of hard to justify it back then. And then for me, you know, diving a rebreather to me requires a lot of discipline. Requires a lot. And most of the open circuit divers I was seeing, they had shit for discipline. I mean, I've done a lot of unfortunate body recoveries over the years, and I was involved in doing the analysis and accident analysis and all these things. And, you know, I found out one thing: equipment doesn't kill people. Configuration doesn't kill people. Existing health problems don't kill people. The environment really doesn't kill people. You know what really kills people?
you tell me, tell us.
Their complacency. Because every fatality that I've ever analyzed, people were trained and knew better to solve the problem that caused their fatality. People have a tendency to get complacent with how they do what they do. I don't need to do that. I know what I'm doing. That ain't going to happen to me. And one thing that scares me the most about myself while I was diving actively was complacency. It scared the shit out of me because, you know, after you've been doing something 20 or 30 years, you know, doing the same site, doing the same shit, you know, it's so damn easy to get complacent. I don't need to do that shit anymore. I know it like the back of my hand. But, you know.
Hey, Larry, we're going to do, I think we're going to get Bob to do a refresh because we're having a couple other technical problems here. So, Bob, you want to do a refresh? If you guys are watching, we're going to just reload. But because this is a bit of a shit fight. So, everybody okay? We're going to flush the dill and bail out. How's that, Bob? Can you hear us now?
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
I can hear you, Bob.
Fucking A. All right.
Larry, can you hear us?
Fucking right. We got her fixed. It just told me my microphone was muted due to Chrome policies. So I got somebody who can fuck off today.
Was there a refresh button or something, Bob? Because I think Larry needs a refresh so we can hear him, but his video is
just a little button on your browser that does the refresh.
Oh.
I hope you didn't just lose me.
Where is that refresh right now?
Okay. Call Tina. She'll fix it for you.
Hey, Tina.
I can hear him.
I need a refresh.
What?
He said I need a refresh.
What do you want?
I don't know. I think he's fine.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
You know you're good. Hey, so we got a couple comments here. We got a couple comments. Did you know, Larry, you know, Bender wants everybody to come dive side mount off his boat. So
these are for you, Bob.
He wants that. Hey, I didn't say this comment. I'm just saying, you know, he's looking for everybody to dive side mount off his boat. So putting that out there.
Where you got all day?
Well, that's part of it.
Well, so we're about the halfway point of the show. I think
Well, we got a couple things we got to do here.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? You want to ask him some questions?
You want to do that, and then we'll get a drink, and then
Yes.
yeah, okay. So Larry, we've sort of started doing this thing. It's called Talkin Tek 20 questions, and we ask just about the same questions to all our guests, except the one guy got really mad when we said one eye or two. Like he's like, we got another thing in the mail about cease and assist, and like it's like the third one.
That's what the lawyers are for. They get us out of the trouble we get ourselves into.
So these questions are like a speed round. The rules are you have to answer. You can't sugarcoat it. Don't worry about hurting people's feelings. Just go with what your gut says. So, Larry, are you ready for Talkin Tek 20 questions?
Let's go.
Okay. Gas or diesel?
Gas.
Wet or dry?
Dry.
Coffee or tea? We know this one.
Coffee.
GUE or TDI?
I didn't hear the first.
GUE or TDI?
Well, I grew up with TDI.
Okay. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Top or bottom?
Top.
Open circuit or closed?
Open circuit.
Computer or tables?
Computer with table backup.
Power or sail?
Power, because I want to get there.
This is the most controversial question we always ask.
Oh, you better ask who I suggested.
Better photographer, Hef or Becky?
Oh my God.
Just go with your gut, Larry.
All right. I'm going to say Hef.
Oh, Hefe's knocking the Royal Daltons over all the rest of the day now. He's just strutting around the house right now. Pardon me. Rust or wood?
Do what?
Rust. Rust or wood?
Wood.
Back mount or side mount?
Back mount.
Better captain, Captain Kirk or Captain Picard?
Kirk.
Shut up.
Canadian, by the way.
Jesus Christ.
In case anybody was wondering, Captain Kirk is a Canadian. Just saying. Salt or fresh?
Fresh.
Rex or Caves?
Rex.
Johnny Cash or Elton John?
Cash.
Ginger or Marianne?
Ginger.
He likes that one.
Deep Air or Trimix?
Both.
Go pill or no go pill?
I'm not sure what this.
All right, we'll skip that one. We got to get rid of that. We need a new question, guys. So comment section in the doogly doo there. Help us.
Give us a question, guys. Somebody come up with something quick.
Last question is favorite movie or better movie, The Deep or The Abyss?
I like the deep.
That was Talkin Tek 20 questions, and like I said, half is like
Bang, bang, bang.
Today.
Hefe's mind is blowing. Becky, she's probably watching again today, although she hasn't commented yet.
She's sobbing.
She's probably crying a little bit, and that's okay, Becky.
Yeah, really, just because I know Hef is better than I do her.
Yeah.
They both do great work.
They do.
All right, so Steve came up with the last question, but I think we all know the answer to this.
That's the nest.
Favorite cave?
Okay.
Is it only one?
Oh, come on, well, it's got to be the nest.
Well, I spent more time in the nest than I have anywhere in the world. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the polder and then Indian.
And we can't dive any of those anymore.
Well, I just saw that Indian's back open again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw somebody diving it recently that they've got back in there for some reason. I don't know if it's open yet, but there was people diving it now.
All right, Larry, I'll be down next week. You want to go for a dive? I'll get in the car tomorrow.
Yeah, I got it in Indian for a long time too. So
Very nice.
that's a unique cave.
Yeah, that was one that I was trying to get into, and then they closed it, and it's been what 7, 8 years at least. It's been closed, maybe more. Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't bother you, but I'd always forget that every time I go to Indian, I need to carry different underwear because the water was always colder at Indian than anywhere else in Florida.
What the fuck, Larry? Was it 68 instead of 72?
Yeah.
You know, Larry.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
Larry, I'm saying it was 35 degrees. 35 degrees last Sunday.
Okay, stop fighting, everybody. Let's have a drink and bury the hatchet. Bobby?
No, I tell you what, it's 35 degrees. I'm in the house.
Yeah, you don't do 35 degrees.
I know.
All right, so
I had like needles stuck sticking me in the top of the head last time I did that shit.
I believe it. So, Larry, it is now the part of the show when we stop everything we're talking about and we take a shot.
Tina,
you need a shot glass, don't you?
Tina, I need a shot glass. This is part of the show where we all do a shot.
Yeah, it's for the show, Tina.
It's for the show. It's not for me.
Larry's such a great team player.
That works.
Let me go grab my Lickermans. All right, guys. We are doing right from Canada, Lickerman's Old Dirty Canadian Whiskey, which I know you've drank this with us, Larry. I'm guessing you don't have any left.
No, I don't. But Tina's bringing me something.
Well, we're going to wait, but I'm going to go ahead and pour mine.
Hold on just a second.
Well, just finished off another bottle. It's fucking way she goes.
Well, hey, the border's open again, so we can get things moving. You know, we'll be in good shape. So,
all right. Oh, I don't know if you drink rum or not.
I love rum. Oh, Larry and your big black dick. There you go. There you go.
I can see him and Wolfie getting into the rum, and that can be really, really messy.
Oh,
cheers.
Fuck. Cheers. Tina, right, cheers to you too.
Cheers.
Oh, Jesus.
Cheers, no tears. Come on.
It's like
nobody cries. Come on.
It's like the devil's mouthwash.
Hey, you know that show we did from from when I was running your booth, you know, encouraging everybody to try them out.
Thanks for that.
We had some guy who kept saying how bad it was. There you go, Larry. And
he drank like half a bottle of stuff.
Yeah, that guy ended up pissing in his daughter's hotel room, just on the floor.
Wow.
So,
he should write a testimonial for Lickerman's. So good, I ended up pissing in my daughter's hotel room. My God.
So,
before we go any further, have we got our other guests lined up, Bob? Do we got something planned here? Or?
We don't have another guest lined up yet. He'll be lined up at least for the after party here.
No, he was supposed to come on and do something here.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, let me make that happen. So in the meantime,
on top of that.
While I'm making that happen, JD has a question for you, Larry. JD wants to know if you had any memorable dives at the Eagle's Nest that you can tell us about. Well, Jesus Christ, JD, how long do you think this fucking show is? Because I'm sure they were all memorable, at least on mix.
On air or mix?
Well, you don't have many on air that are memorable, I'm guessing.
No, I do. I actually do.
Well, let's hear about one of those.
Okay, this happened back in the day when we didn't have redundant BCs, and we were a lot of guys were still diving wetsuits and with a single bladder BC and diving deep on air. So that kind of sets the stage, okay? And back then, some of us, we were starting to, we bought 2 sets of wings and we'd sandwich 2 wings together behind the back plate. So we'd have a backup if something happened to one of them, especially when we're diving wetsuits. But, fortunately on this dive, I was diving a dry suit and I was also, had redundant wings. So we'd planned a DPV dive downstream in a place called Lockwood Tunnel. And my dive partner that day was a guy named Bob McGuire. And he was riding a homemade American underwater scooter that was pretty negative, and they actually built a neoprene sleeve to kind of ease the buoyancy problems with it. So we're motoring. I was taking the lead, and we're down in the Lockwood Tunnel, and I was starting to make a turn up into the breakdown area, and I noticed the lights flickering behind me. So I turned around in time to see Bob heading to the floor. And unfortunately, in the area where he went down, there was nothing but talcum powder silk. I mean, he went down and it completely wiped the visibility out in the cave. So we're at about 230 feet and we're both on air. So the line at that time was running right near the ceiling. So I follow the line back until I find his bubbles. And I release the line and I drop down and follow his bubbles to find him buried in the silt on the bottom of his scooter. And he was waving the corrugated hose that had pulled out of the back of his BC.
Oh boy. Oh fuck.
And he was in a wetsuit. So I grabbed a hold of him and got him to hold me. And I inflated my dry suit and I inflated my BC. And because the silt was so thick, I couldn't move him. And I had an aqua-zep. So with the other hand, I outreached with the aqua-zep and pulled the trigger. And I felt like, I was in that arena and I got horses trying to pull me apart kind of shit,
Yeah.
But finally I broke him loose and I just held on to him until we got into some kind of clear water. And by that time we'd gotten out and we got everything untangled. And I'd actually somehow got some of the line tangled up in the scooter, and I had him go ahead and crawl out because in clear water you could see the line. So I got undone, we got out, and I had to help him because when you get to 130 feet, from 130 feet, it's vertical ascent out of the nest. So he had to hold on to me for ascent all the way out. And so we finally got out and got to the surface. And this was actually the first time in my life I've ever had a man offer me sex.
Larry,
I denied it, but I thought about it overnight, and I called him up the next day. He said, "Too late."
The offer was off the table.
Too late.
So
Too late.
No, that's it.
I hear you tell that. I hear you tell that story, and it's.
I went back in the next day to get his scooter because he lived out of town, and I went back in that area, and only about a quarter of the shroud was all that was exposed out of the silt.
Wow.
That's how deep the silt was in that area.
Wow.
That was just one.
So Larry, we gotta do something here in a minute, but I got a couple other good questions here from our viewers.
Bob, before you get to the question, just want to say it. I think we've all had a dive where everything is going just silky smooth, just perfect. and you hear this subtle little couple notes in the back of your head, and you go, what was that? And you don't know it, but and it's that intuition, but you don't pay attention. And then suddenly, as Blair Mott would say, the trumpets start, a little fucking car pulls up, and 15 fucking clowns get out of the goddamn thing, and it all happens like that. So that story is exactly
Yeah.
that.
What happened?
And everything happens at the very worst time and place.
Oh, every time.
And that's one thing in open water diving and shipwreck diving. We get sloppy and we get away with a lot of things. And one of the things that I've really missed during COVID is not being able to get down and get a week of cave diving. And I feel like it's our greatest tune-up.
Stop. Shut the fuck up. I went down there multiple times when the border was open, and I tried to bring you with, and you would rather sit at a fucking bar in Toronto and fuck off or whatever you were doing than go cave diving.
We're gonna talk about this. We'll talk about this later, Bob. Anyway, I've always found as a tourist cave diver that the littlest thing that's out of place that we get away with, will wait for the most opportune moment or inconvenient moment to make it incredibly apparent why that was a bad idea. Whether it's the way you're clipping your pressure gauge or some other sloppy shit that you've let invade your operation, and it's the cave has a sense of humor, and it's watching you, and it knows when it knows when to get you. So
the ship fails all the time in the cave. There's like these magnetic anomalies that occur throughout the caves, and at any time, any place, anything can fail.
Absolutely.
And that's what I tell my students all the damn time, and said, it's like being a good fighter. You got to be light on both feet. You can't be left-footed or right-footed. You got to be
ready
flexible.
for anything.
Yeah.
So Larry, I had a couple I want to hit from our viewers here. Chris Brown. Chris, I don't know who the fuck you are, but you're asking a question, and I think it's a good one. So, Larry, what is the best word of wisdom for a junior cave diver?
I think the best wisdom is, learn from experience, develop good procedures in how you do what you do, and develop a discipline of being consistent to follow them.
I think that's very good advice. I think that's very good. And the other one I wanted to hit was right after him. Said, piggybacking on your question, from a guy that's been everywhere and done everything, which, Larry, you have, what advice do you have for hopeful explorers in the future?
Good luck.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
Okay, well, I've been around long enough that the one thing that I've realized in my coming up in my youth, and I've been seeing it along the way, is new exploration only occurs because of technology. Because we take what we have to work with is to their limits until the technology comes in to allows the new generation to move further. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, I don't know, unfortunately or not, but it's getting to a point now where it's getting harder and harder because the technology is so advanced now, and people can do 15 hours in the damn water anymore. So there's hardly any limits, but to be able to find access to place that you can gain to do that with, what are you doing as a fixture or a Titanic or what?
Yeah.
So yeah, or find other places in the world, because back in the early days, we thought Florida and Mexico was the only place that had caves, and now we realize that there's caves all over the world. I went to Budapest and found that there was a cave in the middle of the city. You know?
Really?
Yeah. It's underneath one of the buildings in the middle of the city.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And I got sponsored to go to Spain because some dry cavers started hitting sumps that they couldn't get past in their exploration that they were doing. So they sponsored me to come to Spain, and they trained me, you know, their way of rappelling because all their caves are vertical. So they spent a week up in the mountains on the north coast of Spain teaching me how to rope work so they could take me down and show me what they were doing. So it's been a great experience over the years, you know.
Yeah.
There was one thing, one little short story I'll tell is during a break from doing the cave diving, they wanted to take me rock climbing. They had this rock face that they wanted to take me up. I was young and spry back then, and I'd do anything. But anyway, so I said okay. So they gave me these clothes that were that I wouldn't wear in public because it's all too tight, and put shoes on my feet with rubber soles that were way too small. And so we start climbing up this rock face. And I said, well, just look at the dimples in the rock, and that's your steps. It's how you climb. I said, okay. So, and fortunately, I had a double belay. There was two of them, so they were running up ahead of me, and I was belayed by both of them. And so I'm about 300 feet off the ground, and to me, it was pretty damn sheer. And all of a sudden, one of my shoes come off.
Oh, fuck.
I said, fuck. And I froze. I did, man. I'm out of my environment. I froze. And they hollered down to me, what's wrong? I hollered at them. My shoe came off. They hollered at me again. What's wrong? I said, my fucking shoe came off. They said, well, put it back on.
Huh?
Well, and I started using, and I learned from that because I could let go because I had a double belay. I was out of my environment. But I used that later on through training is because most problems, because of people that are in new environments, are normally very simple solutions. All problems are really very simple solutions. We complex them because we can't control our emotions. We say, oh, fucking shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, fuck.
There's I got a great segue to that. There's a great mountaineer named Nimbus Purga. And
that motherfucker.
His words to live by are, when you think you're fucked, when you think you're absolutely fucked, you're only really like 46% fucked. So, yeah. And this guy climbed the 7th highest mountain in the world hungover. Now, Larry,
the deepest,
have you ever done
hungover.
Something similar in the cave diving world hungover?
I don't want to admit that.
Well, come on, hold on. Now, it's been said that Eagle's Nest is the Mount Everest of cave diving, right? I've read that. I've seen that.
Yes, said,
right? I know
in its day, yes.
And there's been plenty of people who've done that hungover. Well, maybe not too many, but I know I can. I'm sure. Yeah.
Well,
gee, man.
I've helped pull 2 fatalities out of there that were hungover.
That happens.
It does happen, but they were totally inexperienced to be where they were at, doing what they were doing.
Yeah. So, we got something here we want to do, but I think there was one comment from this guy, Rob Longridge. I think this is a great way to kind of, we're not done with the show yet, guys, by any means, but we need to start wrapping things up. Rob wants to say thank you for figuring this stuff out and sharing it with the world. So I think we all agree with that one.
Thank you.
I think we all agree with that one, and we all owe you, Larry. So,
But one thing we didn't bring up is that when we first started doing Trimix at Eagle's Nest, and this was actually started in '89, that we were getting on tables from a guy named Bill Hamilton. And the only people that got his work was the military and commercial people. So, and he was working for us. And first thing he told us, he said, we have all kinds of research on heliox, nitrox, and oxygen, but we have nothing on Trimix. So we actually bought a Doppler and hired some people to come out, and we Dopplered every dive we did for the first 6 to 8 months. We Dopplered, and we were sending all our study information to a company called DCIM in Canada that were verifying our readings. So we made adjustments because of the Doppler study we were doing at that time, but I think we were actually the first civilian Doppler study to find out whether or not what this Trimix shit was actually doing or not doing. And a high score, or serious high score, was like a 5. And then if you're under 3, you're pretty safe. But one thing that, made me really think about a lot of stuff was that if you can listen to the Doppler after a dive, and just something as simple as squeezing a fist, you can hear all kinds of bubbles rushing through your body. Much less picking up a set of doubles or throwing gear around and everything else.
And this is why you see captains like myself and Bob screaming at guys when they try to climb a ladder after a big gas dive with their stage model still on, where they want to haul an anchor up or whatever. It's like, fuck it off for a minute. Jesus. Like,
absolutely. Because I've had more people get hurt because of overexertion after a dive. When we were doing some of the heavier stuff and longer dives at Nest, and for us doing it, we were only doing open circuit. And I think the longest dive we ever did was a little over 8 hours.
Jesus Christ, an open circuit.
Yeah. But, we weren't wearing anything coming out of the water. We would, because we built a habitat at 20 feet, and we could come up, and we had hooks on the outside of the habitat. We could hook our manifold on the habitat, pull the gear off. We had a weight belt on us, so then we could swim and come up. We bought a 5,000-pound Carter lift bag, open bottom, and built a frame for it. And we could climb up and sit down inside and get completely out of the water. And we had T-balls outside that with a 9-foot hose that come up inside for us for the oxygen. And then we could have people bringing our, drinks and food out to us while we were decompressing during that time.
Nice.
So that was kind of cool. And especially, during at 90-91, that was pretty cool shit to do.
Oh, I
mean,
bet.
today it's like nothing.
I bet. So, Larry, Larry, we could sit and talk with you all night. And you know what, guys? I think I'm pretty sure Larry's going to agree with this. You're having a good time, right, Larry?
I got another shot or two in me.
Okay, good. Then we're going to do some more of that. And I think we're going to have Larry out on another episode in the next few weeks to tell us some more stories. But in the meantime, before we get back to the show, I think it's time we got a little surprise for Larry. And I think we need to go there. I mean, Larry's our friend. So let me bring in another guest here. I got somebody who wants to say something here. So 3, 2, 1. Here we go. There he is.
Hey guys.
Where's my cigar?
Well, Larry, hey, I'm acting in official capacity tonight, and so a little bit of background. A few years ago, when Panos was still part of heading up GOE, there's a GOE Standards Council, and I got put on the GUE Standards Council, which we decided we had to rename as the GUE Jedi Council because that seemed to be more fitting. So I'm acting as an official council member tonight, but part of the council's responsibility is to address disturbances in the force, and there's been a disturbance in the force that needs to be rectified, and we're going to rectify that tonight. But
let me
a
stop.
little bit of background.
Hold on. I am going to have to, you guys will still be able to hear and see everything, but I need to remove you three from the screen here in a moment. But you can keep talking and you'll be broadcast.
Okay. So a little bit, I was trying to think how long I've known Larry, and it's probably closing in on 30 years, which that doesn't bode well for either one of us. I guess Larry would
like 95 or 96.
Yeah, we did the Trimix course in '96, and
but we'd come down and did cave before that, right?
Yeah, the year before, and so Larry was part of a team that was teaching. There was 6 of us that come down from Canada, and we had Larry as an instructor and this young upstart instructor called Jared Jablonski. And Jared really, to this day, has never really figured out. He never really figured out the Canadians very well. Larry got on right off the bat. So Larry figured us out. But yeah, so I've known Larry for nearly 30 years, and we've learned a lot from Larry. We learned first and foremost, keep your head down in the cave. We also learned when you're driving to the nest, Larry showed us the proper storage location of a Glock in a Dodge Ram cargo van. We also learned that if you're taking your gas blending course, maybe don't drink Labatt Maximum Ice. That seems to be a bit high test. So Larry also taught us how to spot white Scuba Pro double tanks in the back of a pickup truck. I think that might have been Sid's truck, actually.
Yes.
Larry also taught us how to think like the cave, be like the cave. Larry also taught us that do not let Blair sit on a wooden chair near a campfire.
And they've done that. I've seen that one.
Because that chair won't be there in the morning.
Oh, it'll be in the fucking fireplace.
So we learned a lot. Larry was certainly, we had the benefit of 2 really great instructors. Larry had the experience, and Jared this was still a couple of years before GUE had even been developed. So it was an exciting time. And about a year after we did our Trimix was the first years we were up starting to dive the Ganelda. And it's certainly, what we learned from Larry helped us tremendously on a lot of the adventures we've had up in the Great Lakes. And the great thing is we've never lost the passion for the caves. So, it's great to see, we try to catch up with Larry every time we're down there. And it's great to see, he not only mentored us, but he's mentored a whole bunch of people that I know, subsequent divers, and we've always tried to get people to see Larry and learn from his wisdom. So getting to the point of matter at hand, as part of the GUE Jedi Council, occasionally the council has to get together, gather the facts, and render a decision. So I'm going to see if I can. Pull
I got it. I can post it.
Oh, you got it? Okay. All right. Yep.
I'm going to go right there. That is not what I was going for. There we go. Larry, this is for you.
So Larry.
Oh God. No.
So part of, as I say, part of the GUE Jedi Council's responsibility is to rectify things that have been not addressed in the past. So this all started off years ago. I think it actually started with Wolf and Jamie when they got their first Junior Tech Master Award. And it's kind of progressed from a Junior Tech Master to a Senior Tech Master. And then a couple of years ago, Hefe got the Grand Jedi Master. And so we felt it important tonight as a council that we had to give Larry the lifetime achievement as the Grand Master Jedi Council member, with all its rights, privileges, and responsibilities here too. no cash value, gather the facts, render a decision. So Larry, congratulations. You know, thanks for being a mentor for many of us over the years. So thank you for that.
I love it, and heartfelt, appreciation. And the only thing I ever wanted was to inspire people to love what they're doing and to be safe and disciplined at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I never ever call myself an instructor, because I always wanted to be called a teacher, because I don't want to tell people how to do things. I always wanted to inspire them to think about why they do what they do. And when the shit hits the fan, if they've got those options that they've already explored in the past, they can solve any problem.
Yeah, and I think I know a lot of us have talked about sort of the forgotten art of the mentorship, and that's certainly that was how you taught, and it served many of us well. So
and that's the way it all was in the beginning,
Yeah.
and it's kind of evolved into a business, because in the early days, it's that we could not and would not advertise cave diving, and now it's like a big commodity, and I Jared came out when Jared came out with GUE, the timing and everything was perfect, because he had the time to see what was working and what wasn't working. And, I was just fortunate that I had a chance to kind of get to know him in the early days, because we both worked as staff instructors for Jenny Springs in the early days. And, we got to know each other quite well. And I am so proud of everything that he's done and what he did with GUE. It's, I'm just glad I had a chance to be along that roadway, with him, because we've taught many classes together. We haven't did a lot of dives together, but, we've worked and associated together. And he was always my biggest defender against George over the years. Because every time George would come up with something, Jared was there to try to defend me for it. But anyway, that was always cool.
We never let Jared forget about that trip to Hal Watts 40 Fathom Grotto, though. We never let him forget that. That
was a classic there. That was such a classic. Between that and, us stopping by the bar when we were supposed to meeting Jared at the dive shop. And we stopped by the Santa Fe River Bar or someplace, and we were kind of late getting where we were at. But, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was an interesting 3-day course, Larry.
Woo! Yeah, I never forget you guys. And this is all we get out of our money for 40 Fathom Grotto?
Clinking change from a 50.
God damn. Woo. Yeah. I was just going through some paperwork, and I just found my open water instructor ITC certification. It was from Hal Watts in 1983, 82.
Wow.
When he was with SSI. I'll probably see him tomorrow, because there's a memorial for Tom Mount tomorrow in High Springs.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I'm sure there's a lot of people showing up for that, because Tom was the first one that started any of the technical programs, and then and not until Brett broke away in '95 to TDI form and start doing theirs, and then everything rolled uphill from there, actually. So, but yeah, Jared and I, have always been close, so I feel close about that.
That's cool.
Great.
You know,
All right,
I
guys.
I was never able to, because there was a lot of influence back in those early days about conforming to WKPP and all that stuff. And I was just not a group guy. I was too independent. So I think most of George's problem was with me was that I wouldn't join them.
You did your own thing.
I did, and for good or bad, I mean, I could have done a lot better dives or a lot different dives, but I've had a chance to dive Wakulla. I've had a chance to dive Uno. I've dove those sites, but not like they have, and some shit up there. But but I appreciate what I did.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, it's Friday, and you know what happens on Friday. And she's been a wild week. So,
we got to start wrapping up the show here, so everybody knows how we end the show.
Well, a couple things. So, getting trashed and trashing caves is going to run February 4th.
Whoa, no. This is invite only.
Yeah.
So all you people watching, we're not inviting all you people. We are going to contact the ones we want to hang out with, and the rest of you can go fuck yourself. We don't really want to hang out with all these people. Let's put this out there.
All right.
Unless they're in side mount, then Bender's your guy.
Fuck off, Bob. All right, it's Friday. Bob, I'm sure you got a list. Go ahead.
Well, I had a big list, but then I got pissed off during this show because fucking Be Live, once again, who I've had on many times, just fucking muted me. I don't know if it's my language, if it's what, if it's our show. It could be a combination of all these things, but they muted me. And it kind of fucked things up in the flow of the whole show. But you know what? I guess fuck off Be Live. But if that's the only problem we're going to have today, it wasn't that big of a deal. So, yeah, that's who I got. So, Larry, who do you have that you would like to tell to fuck off? Larry, you got a list. I know you do. You told me the other day at the bar.
Yeah, it's like pretty much anybody involved with the NACD, I guess.
Oh, fuck. There you go.
Terry, you got anybody?
Well, I was kind of worried that maybe somebody at the border might have had to fuck off, but actually the border crossing was very smooth. So I gotta, I don't know. I hate to bring up Trudeau because that's all I ever send.
That's your guy every time.
That's my go-to guy.
You're consistent, if nothing else. There you go. All right.
I know you got one.
Yeah. Well, this is a broad one, but
was it the guy who wanted to buy the car?
No, he already got told. I don't have to tell. He doesn't watch the show, so anytime there's an incident or there's a current event or something, there's always that fucking guy that's on the inside and he's got the fucking inside scoop and his brother's a fucking cop or a fucking U.S. Army Ranger or he's listening to the fucking scanner and there was a fucking emergency call out on the Doria or some bullshit like that. Those people are known as scoop asses, and they go on to fucking deco stop or scuba board, and they chirp on about bullshit they know nothing about because it inflates their ego. So if you're a fucking scoop ass, you can fuck off.
There you go. We got one more here that somebody commented. Looks like Latoya says Putin can fuck off.
Yeah,
so,
he's
fuck
right
that
there.
guy too.
Yeah.
All right, Latoya, we agree with you.
Cool.
So,
good show. Larry, we'll have to have you on again. We'll
Hey guys, make sure you add in the comment section, even though we're turning this off. If you want to see Larry back, let us know. I'm pretty sure we can talk him into it. I'll just send him another bottle of whiskey and I'm sure he'll be into it. Larry, you don't log off yet because we do have an after party.
Yeah, I got some more stories that I need to tell.
Oh, good. Good. And you know what? We'll get your stories. We'll get you back on. We'll schedule another date. Guys, listen up. We'll get you. We're going to have more with Larry here coming up soon. but
Yeah, I got
right
some with
now-
you too.
this will be good. So we will we'll see everybody later. I think in a couple weeks we got a Great Lakes captain that I'm getting scheduled. So she ought to be a lot of fun, and stay tuned to the Facebook page for updates on when that's coming, but it should be about 2 weeks, I think. So, all right, guys.
And Bob, hey, just a shout out to Hefe for pulling that cert together in the last minute.
Yeah, well done, Hefe. Go fuck yourself too. But thanks a lot, Hefe.
Thank you.
All
guys.
right. So, Larry, stay online. Don't log off. We're going to log off from these guys.